Hello everybody and welcome to the GMS Magazine channel. I am Paco Garcia, your host, and this is the RPG Interview Room, the show in which I am lucky enough to get together with people from the world of role-playing games and actually ask them a bunch of questions, which is great. I love it. Today I have with me not one but two people, and I love the idea of having them around because they both, especially Stephen, the author, he epitomizes the things that I've been trying to say in the How to Publish Your Role-Playing Game series, which is that you should publish your game. Stephen Rasheed James started literally by just collecting a bunch of adventures that he had written over the years, and out of that and some development came Lands of Theia. That, together with Kevin Glusing from Sheepdog Samurai, Samurai Sheepdog, I beg your pardon, they have a great book for Pathfinder and hopefully very soon for 5e and Pathfinder 2 as well, which is fantastic. Now, because this is the kind of story that I would love people to be inspired by, I thought it would be a great idea to have them around. And when I asked if they would be, who would be interested, and they said yes, I thought, yes, this is the kind of people I want to talk to, which is wonderful. So I am not going to say anything else. I'm just going to leave Kevin and Stephen Rasheed James to say everything they have to say, which is really, really interesting. I'll see you after the interview. Stephen and Kevin, welcome to the show. First time that I have either of you here. First time that we're going to talk about Samurai Sheepdog. First time that we're going to talk about Lands of Theia, which is very exciting. How are you two doing?
Good.
Doing well, thank you.
Goody. Okay, because we have never really spoken in the past, because we haven't acquainted ourselves, in the whole English manner. We should start with finding out, how good you are answering questions and making sure that we get into the shebang of answering and questions and asking questions and stuff. So I have five. That would be five questions for you, just to profile you a little bit so we can find out what kind of people you are. So question number one, and it doesn't matter what order you answer this, which one of the two of you answer first. So question number one, tea or coffee?
Oh, coffee. Actually, no, you know what? Now that I think about it, tea is good. But see, there's the thing, right? So you get the American tea versus European tea, and it becomes a question, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll drink caffeinated tea, iced tea all day, but then if I want coffee, I'm going to have hot coffee in the morning.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think my preference is like fruity flavored teas.
Okay.
But I'll drink a chocolatey mint coffee though in an instance. But I think I'm gonna go with tea on that one.
Okay, tea is good. It's all good. I mean, tea's fine, absolutely fine. Not for wake up though. No, wake up it has to be coffee. But okay. Question number two: the beach or the mountain?
Oh, definitely the mountains for me. I enjoy hiking.
Okay, good.
I would have said the beach in the past, but then my wife's been playing Monster Hunter Iceborne, so I have a new appreciation for the mountains.
Okay. I'm sure she's going to appreciate you saying that. That's what you did there. Family points for the win. Okay. Question number three, cars or motorbikes?
Cars.
Cars, without a doubt.
Yeah, my dad actually rode a Harley for most of his life, and so it was really cool. But I had no interest in doing it myself.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough indeed. Now we're getting into the slightly harder questions. Fantasy or science fiction?
Oh, the fantasy's an easy answer for me.
Yeah. Same with that.
Okay, man of convictions. I like it. Last but not least. Okay. Zombies or vampires?
Ooh, that's a good one. Stephen?
I think I think I'm gonna go with vampires simply because I don't want to see a zombie or a vampire outside my door. But if I saw a vampire, at least I know that as long as I don't let him in, I'm safe. Whereas a zombie will just try to get in.
It's a good answer.
That's very good, actually.
Huh. Interesting. I hadn't thought of it from that angle before. You know what, though? I think I'd still have to go with zombie because I've seen enough zombie movies and other media to kind of to feel like I would at least last a couple days.
Okay, fair. Well, I was talking with about this with one of my work colleagues, with Olaya, who, for a living before this pandemic and all the confinement started, she used to work for a company doing LARPing. But it's one of those companies that will take over a whole town to do a zombie LARPs with 2,000 or 3,000 people.
Oh, that's awesome!
Oh, yeah.
It is pretty incredible what they do. And what she said is, it's been studied that the best way to do well during a zombie apocalypse would be to stock up with food and don't move.
Yeah. Yep.
Just don't move. Let them die out, because eventually they're just going to lie out. And it's been really researched. How they've done it, I don't know. I don't know how believable that is. But that's 9 seasons of The Walking Dead down the drain for me.
Well, but you got to consider with The Walking Dead, you're looking at the human condition, right? Like, yeah, sure, the answer might be just stay still and don't do anything. But how many humans do you really know that would do something like that?
Yeah, you've got a point.
True.
Especially the moment that they feel that somebody close to them is either threatened or there's some way to better their current situation.
Yeah,
that's a fair point. Okay, I'll forgive The Walking Dead. Okay, good. Thank you. You just saved The Walking Dead for me. That's amazing. We've only been at it for 5 minutes. Wow. Right. Okay. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about. Let's talk a little bit more. Let's start talking about you as a writer, Stephen, and the Lands of Theia, which it's already on sale. Drive-through for Pathfinder, but what is the Land of Theia? What have you done?
Well, essentially what it is it's a I've been a dungeon master since I was like 10 years old, and it's just a collection of all of the quests and adventures that I've created and refined over time that eventually I learned that my players just really loved it. And they were like, whenever I said, all right, I'm going to do a new game, they'd say like, oh, are you going to do it in that country that has the sky racing? Or, oh, are you going to do it in that country that's kind of technological and kind of not? And eventually I was like, you know what, let me save some of these and write them down. So it's like a new world, and I wanted to make it where it's unexplored by even the people that live there. So by the time the players get there, like during the Age of Adventure, that's the time frame that it's in, it's around the time where the natives in Theia are asking themselves, what are the answers to all these mysteries? What is that ancient ziggurat over there, and how come it's cursed? We're going to send people to these locations and discover, and that's where that world is. That's the stage that world is in now.
Okay, so it's kind of a incipient civilization, or are there lost civilizations in there that people have to find?
What it is they have such civilizations already, but the civilizations have never worked together to discover their history. They've essentially just been trying to survive. But now that they're in a more comfortable place, they're starting to ask questions. They're starting to wonder about these legendary tales of dragons to the north, or stuff like that. They're trying to find out. It's like an exploration renaissance for them. So that's when the adventure begins, so to speak.
Okay, so what technological age are we talking about? Are we talking medieval? Are we talking before that? What kind of environment are people going to find when they get to Theia?
Most of the planet of Theia is still in the medieval kind of age, with magical technologies here or there. But there are certain countries, 2 or 3 of them in particular, that have evolved beyond that but they don't particularly share that with the other countries. Take, for example, there's a country known as Nuanalar, and that's more of a, I guess I should say, they're at an industrial revolution, steampunk kind of phase, but they don't want their inventions to get out into the majority of Theia, because next thing you know, everyone has locomotives and firearms, and they don't particularly want enemies that have that.
Okay.
So it's kind of depending on what kind of adventure you want to go on, there is always going to be a place for it.
Okay. What kind of, with touching on that, this country having kind of industrial revolution, renaissance kind of thing, what's the geopolitical map of Theia like?
Geopolitical, maybe.
In terms of what kind of countries can you find? How do the countries get along with each other?
Governments, things like that.
Oh, I see. Essentially what it is a lot of the countries have different types of governments. Like, take, for example, with Nuanalar in particular, they have what are called the chief minds. And it's every so often they have this big test with every citizen and that's willing to take the test. And the smartest person becomes the leader of the country, the person who gets the highest score. So that's how they control their country. Their neighbors are a magical country that control their country through magical powers. So essentially they have, I think it's every 4 years, they have an election where they're like, this person wants to be the leader of the necromancy section of the country. So they have to prove that they're a better necromancer than the one that is already in charge. So every single government has its own different way of doing things. But for the most part in their history, they usually keep to themselves until now.
Go ahead.
Oh, sure. The way the countries communicate with each other, it depends on which countries they are. Like with Onalar and their magical neighbors in Persimum, they kind of used to be going to war for a little bit in the past. And that war ended in a standstill. So they kind of dislike each other, but they're not trying to actively do anything about it. Whereas you have other countries that have good relationships with the neighboring governments. It's all mapped out in the book where they have different relationships based on where they are and then the events of the past.
It sounds like there is no colonialism within Theia. Is that correct?
Maybe a little bit. If I may jump in for just a moment.
By all means, yes.
Yeah. So, if I'm understanding your use of colonialism correct, basically we're looking at country. So, like, there's a country of it's called Hunati, and in Hunati there are that's like the halfling homeland. Right, so pretty much any of the halflings, the majority of them that you're going to find are going to be in this one country, and then they have kind of taken their country back over from people that were trying to rule it over them.
Okay.
And so then they've been colonizing. Their country, and then also they send people out to other parts of the world. A lot of the colonizing and things of that nature has happened in previous ages. The Age of Adventure is less focused on building new colonies and stuff, and more focused on kind of advancing the present and looking toward the past.
Yeah. Okay, I like the sound of that an awful lot, because it kind of feels like a little bit of a departure from the standard medieval fantasy world in which a nation has something that another nation wants, and that nation is going to try and conquer it to get it, or this nation seems to have less technology than this other one, so this other technology is going to go unabused, abuse the other nation. Is that something that you did intentionally?
Yeah, we wanted to, how should I put this? We wanted to make the relationships between I wanted to make the relationships between the countries seem realistic, but at the same time, Theia is a world where essentially it's very there were a lot of cataclysms in the past. They just recently, I think, when was it, Kevin, that we said it? Since the Age of Fire, was that like some like?
It was about 80 years ago.
Yeah, 80
was
years
when it
ago.
ended.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where essentially there was a collection of dragons that took over the world, and that set their history back. And they got rid of that. It's just there's a lot of cataclysms that happen over and over again. So mainly the countries are just focused on finding a way to survive and exist on Theia until here recently. So we wanted to make it that the countries have relationships with each other. So you're not just like, hey, this is the Wild Western world and this is the jungle adventure world and they have nothing to do with each other. That doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But at the same time, given with what happened in the history, it's not too much because you're not exactly planning on going to war with another country when your own citizens don't have food or shelter or anything like that. You're not thinking, I'll try to conquer someone else when you can't even take care of what's going on right now. So there is some history between close countries, but take, for example, the country that Kevin was talking about, Hunadi, and the country that I was talking about earlier, Nuanalar, they're on different sides of the globe, so they have almost no interaction.
Interesting. How did you find inspiration to write these things and come up with these ideas? Because this is something that obviously requires a fair amount of thinking. This doesn't sound like something that just pops up into your head and you just go ahead and write it down.
Oh no, it's it's been a long time in the making. Once I started putting the countries on the map, I started to think about the adventures that I had written in the past and how they would affect certain things. Like take, for example, if I have an adventure that happens in one country and at the end of said adventure, the characters end up, I don't know, terraforming a mountain range or something like that. Of course, such a big event would affect the other country that's right on the other side of that mountain range when they look over there and they're like, what happened? So it's when I was putting them all beside each other on the map, I thought about the adventures that I had written and I thought about how they would affect neighbors. So I put them down in places where I felt like they would make sense. It took a lot of thinking. And like I said, I've been working on them since I was a kid. So it definitely wasn't something that happened quickly.
I'm liking a lot.
So if I
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add one of the fun things that we ran into when putting this book together. We have a timeline that goes from the earliest of ages, from basically the creation myth, into this extravagant kind of history of the world from its beginning in such a way. There's details that allow you to really pick up and play in any of the different setting, in any of the different ages that exist within the world. So, for example, there's the Age Before Ages, which is more of the like an exploration kind of. Races are young; they haven't spread out too far. The world is new. They're looking around, trying to figure out what is going on around them. Then you have the Age of Earth, when what was originally one continent basically split into two, and its entire central half just fell into the lower part of the world, filling with ocean and stuff like that. So then people are stuck on different continents. Now they have to get used to it. And then there's more of the let's figure out what is going on now and interact with the races that we're stuck with. Then you move into like the Age of Water. Well, okay, so now these continents have been separated and there's an ocean between them, but now they've kind of started building boats. They've started sailing. That's your colonization age of, people go around the world and go, okay, let's find all of this stuff that happened and start building back up and founding countries. Like there's 3 or 4 countries that are founded during the Age of Water, including like an island nation that we call Fafutan. And in there, that's basically they find like these kaiju and they learn how to control them. And then they become kind of a world power for a while. Yeah, it's interesting because you've got that one isolated country with these giant monsters like a kraken they have that they can control, and so everyone just kind of lets them be on their own because they don't want to start a war on the ocean and have to worry about dealing with that, you know. But you get into you get into the next age where from the age of water you go into the age of fire when the dragons attacked and basically took everything over for almost 2,000 years. Like basically the age of fire was the longest age of the world because the dragons just kept everything under their thumb for so long until finally the humans, the orcs and the dwarves worked together and rose up against the dragons and actually overthrew them in order to get the world back under the control of the mortal races.
Yeah.
Which kind of segues really well into one of the things that I wanted to mention was that like a lot of the way that the races play in this game they're kind of counter to what you expect in a traditional D&D or Pathfinder game. As mentioned, the humans, the orcs, and the dwarves all worked together. So the orcs are actually a good race for the most part. You know, I mean, there can be evil orcs too, but you know, they're recognized as heroes among the people because they helped to save the world from the dragons.
That sounds pretty amazing. Yeah, I like the feeling that, you know, how many people create the world to have adventures in. I get the feeling that you have created the adventures and the world has been shaped around that, which it kind of makes it feel like the world is made for it. I don't know, am I making sense in here? It just feels different.
Yeah, that's kind of what ended up happening was I had a bunch of adventures, and my players started saying, when I play in this adventure that you're making now, can I play as a guy from that other country? Because that other country was cool. And I was like, okay, I can make that work.
What kind of characters can people play in this? We know the halflings, the humans, the orcs, but what kind of classes, what kind of professions, who could they be in Theia?
Pathfinder has, well, all RPG games really have an amazing collection of classes, and I didn't want to take that away from people. But at the same time, I actually added a bunch of classes that I had made and refined over time, as well as I added a few that Kevin has published in some of his earlier works as well. And honestly, I think that there's enough new stuff in the book Lands of Theia where you could just have that book and play with that alone, because it itself has 13 new classes in it.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty impressive. Tell me a little bit about them. What kind of classes are they? How are they special?
All right. Well, let's see. Let me pick a few. How
about the Barrier Sentinel?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. So the Barrier Sentinel is a defensive class. When I was younger, I remember my little brother asked me, it's like, hey, because he had just come from video games, and he said, so which one of these is like a tank? And I was like, well, Pathfinder doesn't really have something like that. But then it clicked in my head. It's like, why don't I make something like that? And that was the idea behind the Barrier Sentinel. It's like a very defensive character. They have specializations with shields and whatnot, and their main focus is not only to absorb damage, but to keep damage away from other people to protect their allies. And if somebody does get past them, they have abilities that help them punish that character for getting past them as well. So I thought that was something that was unique. Another favorite of mine is the Censor and the Zealot. Everyone's familiar with the Paladin class, and by extension, everyone's familiar with the Blackguard or the Anti-Paladin class, where one's a champion of goodness and one's a champion of darkness. But I was sitting there one day thinking to myself, it would be interesting if there was a champion of law and a champion of chaos, because there are two other elements to that. So the Censor is kind of like a spellcasting paladin, but they focus on keeping people in line and in order. They have abilities that shut down other abilities that they don't like, and they have abilities that bar people from doing certain things. Just essentially keeping control is their main theme. Then, on the other hand, the Zealot is a class that's kind of similar to the Barbarian, where they have this rage that they can go into, but the rage actually causes chaotic effects to happen all around them, randomizing certain things. And then as they become more powerful, they gain more control over that randomization. Like they might go into the chaotic state and be very powerful spellcasters, or they might actually become very powerful warriors, or they might even, like with every attack or step, change the battlefield around them. It just depends on the chaotic effect that they get. And I thought it was a cool take on the Chaos Knight kind of trope. What's a favorite class for you, Kevin?
So of the classes that we have in there, I really do enjoy the Barrier Sentinel. That's kind of why I brought it up. For me, the Barrier Sentinel is awesome because it does something different than you would expect. Paladins are kind of tanky if you really think about it. They defend their allies, they have healing spells, they have lay on hands and stuff. And fighters are also, they can defend their people because they've got heavy armor, they've got armor training. From a mechanical standpoint, there isn't a shortage of options for that. But at the same time, the Barrier Sentinel does it in such a way, using their focus and their shield techniques and stuff, that gives them a flavor that really fits into the theme that Theia goes for. Mm-hmm. Like the countries that we represent, where we kind of suggest if you're going to be a Barrier Sentinel, you're probably from one of these countries. It's not required, but they're more common. So like, for example, one of the countries we have is called Idon Ray. And in Idon Ray, it's very militaristic. They have very soldier-based government, things like that. And they train Barrier Sentinels there under the guidance of what's called Testament. Testament was a dragon that they had in the world during the Age of Fire, who was actually a good guy and helped the people. And so they teach what Testament did during that time in order to try to help the Barrier Sentinels do better. And so they're not magical. They're martial. They're more fighter related, but the ways that they enact their techniques and the things that they do really give them a flavorful way of executing that.
That sounds brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, it was when we first started talking about those classes, part of it was, how do we make this not just another flavor of fighter, Because it would have been easy, and actually there's a few archetypes that give a couple of the abilities back and forth, right? So like a fighter might get the occasional Barrier Sentinel thing here and there if you take the right feats or a prestige class or something. But we wanted to make it unique enough that the world itself, you would have a reason to have a party that has a fighter and a Barrier Sentinel and perhaps even a paladin,
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a bit about mechanics and mechanisms. Right now, it's for Pathfinder. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen next? Is there going to be a Pathfinder 2 or a D&D 5e edition or a Savage World or Fate or...
So we are actually, as part of our Kickstarter, we are translating the content over to both 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder 2. Okay. In doing so, the conversion of those has been a lot of fun because, both of them, D&D 5e has been around for a while, but by comparison to Pathfinder, it's a simpler game. It allows for easier entrance for newer players. So there's some complexities there that we work around and kind of break down to make it to that level. While still entertaining the class, right? So like we did actually already do, as part of the Kickstarter, we did a conversion of the Barrier Sentinel. Not to belabor that class, but it was kind of the first one that we did the conversion for into 5th edition. And so we set it up so that class had its own abilities, had its own things that it did that fell within the rules of the 5th edition game, and it's actually available online at 5esrd.com. You can find it there as kind of a preview of what's to come.
A question I always have whenever people are going to release the same setting for 2 different games, in the past, and I mean with Pathfinder 1, it was a lot easier because the gap between Pathfinder 1 and 5th edition is a lot narrower than the gap between 5e and Pathfinder 2. I mean, they are 2 mechanically very, very, and from the flavor point of view, very different games, especially in the way that characters can progress and how characters are created. How are you handling it? So let's say that I play in a table with you, Stephen, with 5e, and then next week, Kevin, I'm playing with you on a Pathfinder 2, and the flavor of the game is the same. How are you going to manage that?
So, right, and I kind of know what you mean. I'm primarily doing the conversions. Stephen wrote the Pathfinder 1st edition version, but his experience is still growing with the other 2. So I've kind of taken over the conversion portion of that. As far as one of the things that we did is I did not want to constrain myself by saying that every single individual thing that exists within Pathfinder 1 is going to be in Pathfinder 2 and 5th edition D&D. It's impossible because, you're not going to have 5th edition moves way away from feats, and Pathfinder 2 moves right into them and makes them primary. They really are 2 ends of the spectrum. And so the goal is actually to maintain the flavor of each of the races and classes or ancestries or origins or whatever you're going to call them in each of the editions, and still be able to play those characters the way that you expect. There are things, obviously, they will share the basics of the mechanics, but the mechanics will be realized through the medium that we're playing it at. So if you're going to be a Barrier Sentinel in 5th edition, you're still going to be a protection type character. You're going to get the shields. You're going to get the heavy armor. Same thing in 2nd edition Pathfinder. Those don't change. But in Pathfinder 2, you might have a series of feats that let you get more inclined into using your shield as a shield slam ability or your shield block, stuff like that. Whereas in Pathfinder 5th edition, it's fairly straightforward. You're this class, you get a shield, you get a couple of focus abilities that you can use as bonus actions, stuff like that. And then at the end of the day, the dragon swings at you, you block it, you're fine. But like you get into another class like the Censor, for example, and the Censor is more of a magic-leaning class. So in 5th edition, you're going to have that, do they get 9 levels of spellcasting or do they get partial spellcasting, things like that. Whereas in 2nd edition, how many feats are we giving them at each given level to be able to represent each of the different forms that they're going to have access to?
Stephen, I'm curious, how has it been for you to actually collect all these adventures and turn them into a game? What have been the challenges as an author into doing that?
To be honest, it's been kind of hard, but it's been really fun. It's been great. I've already been collecting all of my work for years now. Actually, it was again, I'm gonna kind of throw a direction at my wife. She saw my collection of composition notebooks and things of this nature, and she said, "What's all this?" And I said, "Oh, that's my Dungeons and Dragons work for all my classes and adventures and whatnot." And then she looked at me and she said, "You're an adult now and you could publish this, right?"
Boom!
Yeah.
Wow, that's okay.
So it's really been great. It's let me. I've reread a lot of my old work, and now with what I know, I've been refining it. And Kevin, working with him has been great. He's been challenging me, like we have a section in the book about the imports and exports of goods of every single country. And when he asked me that at first, I was like, I have no clue. So, so I started working on it, and it really, now I'm actually working on, over on the side, I'm working on the first adventure path that takes place in Theia. And I revisited that section that we worked on with the imports and exports, the food, the fabrics, what they sell and what they get back from other countries. And it's helped me to really shape the atmosphere of the place where the adventure path takes part in. So it's been a really awesome experience. There were a few challenges, but really the only challenges waiting for things to be done, like artwork to come in or things like that, so I can get started on the next step. Because as soon as I give it to him, I'm like, okay, what can we do? What's next? I'm really
You're geared up for it.
Yeah.
Since you've been writing adventures for a very long time, and you have to revisit them, what has been your evolution as a creator? You know, what have you seen looking back in time and thinking, wow, I used to write this?
Yeah.
And what's the difference between what you used to write then and what you write now?
What I wrote then, the adventures I think were fun for my players, but for me rereading them, they didn't have enough substance for me. Like when I'll go ahead and use the Barrier Sentinel for an example. When I first created that, I was like, these guys are tanky and they protect people. Well, I was rereading that and I was like, but what makes them different? Just like Kevin said, what makes them different from fighters, or what makes them different from something else? I feel like as I've grown older, I've come to expect more. So when I read my old stuff, I'm like there's a chapter, there's something, and they're like, this place is a jungle and it has jungle-like things in it. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, but why? So it's really helped me write the history of the world and it's just, I don't know. It's just, I look back and I want to improve it.
Okay. Have you looked back into it and read something and thought, oh, why?
Let me think about something in particular, because I know that's happened. But usually when
I was going to say I have kind of an interesting one for that. So when we first started discussing what we were going to add to the game as far as classes and stuff, one of the classes that Stephen actually had written out is a commoner class that is a player character class as opposed to an NPC.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a neat concept, but when I first read it, I was like, I'm not sure that that's something that we're really going to grab people with, you know? And so we kind of talked about that, and we were like, let's put this one to the side for now, and we'll maybe readdress it later down the road if people start coming to us and go, you know, I really want to play Farmer Joe.
That's, you know what? Yes, that's exactly what, because what happened was my little sister wanted to play a farmer in one game, and I was trying to get her to play with us. So I was like, okay, I'll make a farmer class. And that's what that was. And he's got a point, because I remember him mentioning that, and I was thinking to myself, yeah, if I bought this book and I saw commoner in there, I'd feel like I was gypped a class.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I want to take 1 second though, and I do want to kind of do a bit of a plug here for somebody so there actually exists 2 really well done versions of a commoner class as a player character already, and that was part of the other reason why I kind of wanted to step back from that one. There's the legendary commoner that they came out with, and I believe it was Legendary Games, but please feel free to not quote me on that. And then the other one, Little Red Goblin Games, actually did a commoner class that they put together that was pretty good. Those are the 2 I remember off the top of my head that were really good and well-done versions of a commoner class that I was like, you know, I really can't top that in this case. And if we really were to do it, if I really wanted to go back, I might actually work with them and collaborate and say, hey, what do you think if we use this class and we give it our own flavor?
Yeah.
But I think that can actually be a really cool character class. I can imagine somebody having proficiency in plow. Here comes your enemies. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna plow them to death, evidently. And there you go with your plow and this big mega horse that you also have proficiency in riding because they're bloody hard to ride. I mean, those horses are the size of a house. And right. So that would actually be quite an interesting character, really. That would be the kind of character you get. They've invaded us and destroyed us. No, don't worry. I've got a farmer level 20 here. Your tomatoes are safe now. That would be incredible. Okay, and on the other side, have you looked back into what you used to write and thought, whoa, oh, wow, that I can work with?
You know what? I'm gonna say with that, the first thing that comes to mind is the Censor and the Zealot class.
Mm-hmm.
I love all the classes that we made, that I made, and then I love the classes that Kevin was saying, hey, you should, I like how you put the spin on your classes, take a look at this class and see, and I love those too. But I'm going to say that two classes that are close to me are the Zealot and Censor classes, simply because I really like, I don't know, I like their aesthetic. I like the idea of them. I've always been enamored by the whole Champion of Chaos thing, but whenever everyone is familiar with going online and trying to find like a homebrew version of the Champion of Chaos, and it's just bonkers.
See, and on my side of things, Stephen handed me these copious notes and design pieces for these classes and the races and stuff. And I remember reading through them on our initial go before we actually agreed to really start putting this all together. And I looked at, there was the three classes that really stood out to me that I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. This guy's got some good writing. And that was the mercenary, the noble, and the Thaumaturge. So just to kind of give a brief description of those, the mercenary in Theia is a class that really fits well into the setting because everybody likes adventurers, but there's usually kind of a catch-all that they want to try to get, or a small job like, I just need somebody to protect my caravan for a little bit, or I need somebody to help me guard a tomb for a while. And the average fighter or the soldier or whatever is going to cost too much. But if you get some mercenaries to help you, they have a little bit of everything that they can do, and they've got their different jobs that they can perform and focus on. The noble was, of those three, probably my favorite, because it gives the idea that the nobles in Theia, even they go out of their way to not just be in a castle all the time. Like there are nobles that are in castles and do their thing. They're the queens and the kings and but the adventuring nobles that actually go out into the world and try to make a difference and do things, they use a mechanic that allows them to kind of throw their wealth around and be able to become adventurers. Like they pay the best money to learn how to fight or to learn how to cast spells or whatever they're going to do. And in doing so, it gives them that kind of a different flavor of, you're an adventurer and you're a rogue, but I was trained by the world's greatest, thieves because my family paid for it, So I'm just as good as you, but I didn't have to fight for it, I didn't grow up. And so they have to get used to that kind of stuff. And then the Thaumaturge is cool because for the Thaumaturge, the idea is that you're taking kind of like the Arcanist hybrid class, right, where it's a wizard and a wizard and a sorcerer. But for the Thaumaturge, it's actually a cleric and a wizard. And then there's archetypes, and different options that maybe it's a cleric and a sorcerer, or maybe it's a bard and something else, a magus or an inquisitor. But the chief main version of the class was cleric and wizard. And for a long time, a lot of people, and there are versions of them out there that have been published. I think I may have even done one at one point. But But the way that he does it for this class in particular, for the Thaumaturge, is pretty cool in that they only ever learn up to 4th level spells, like legitimate 4th level spells. Mm-hmm. But they have a mechanic that allows them to merge spells together and to get higher level spells as a result. So as the base mechanic, you get take 2 1st level spells that have matching descriptors, or pieces that match together. Either they both share a saving throw, or they're both conjuration spells, or something like that. You combine them. Now they're a 3rd level spell, and that 3rd level spell that you cast it just like a normal spell. You use the highest of the spell casting time. So if you have like let's say you have 2 transmutation spells that you put together at 1st and 2nd, and then they come together. Now they're a 4th level spell. And so in that way, you can get up to 9th level spells by combining these. And then you get your signature spells over time and stuff. It's a complex class. Mm-hmm. We actually we spell that out right at the beginning. We're like, this is not a class for beginners. But if you want to take the time, because you're going to specifically be looking at, okay, this spell I have, I like this spell. What can I put it together with? What can I combine it with? But it was built specifically for those types of players. Like I would play a Thaumaturge because I would enjoy looking up what spell interactions we have. And we did make it a little easier on people because there's a section in the Magic chapter that actually goes over standard combinations of spells that you would expect to see in Theia.
That sounds like very well worth investing time into. I like that concept a lot, because I am one for forgetting what spells I have. If I have a character with an overload of spells, I just forget about them. That's why I tend to play more the rogue or the ranger kind of characters. But if I could have less spells and combine them in creative ways, I think I can work with that. That sounds pretty good. Stephen, considering that this book is already out for Pathfinder, and it's going to be out for Pathfinder 2 and 5e, has it become what you expected and wanted it to become when you started collecting everything and writing it down?
I'm going to be real with you. It's honestly become quite more. I remember we were working on it together, and Kevin came to me and he said, "These would be cool if we released it for 2nd edition and 5th edition, 2nd edition Pathfinder and 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons." And I said, yeah, that's cool. It's like I essentially just wanted to maybe release the core book and then some of my adventure paths. I have quite a few of them, as you can imagine. Yeah. And I wanted to just get some of my work out there, and maybe if it blew up a little more. But it's grown a lot bigger than I thought. I never thought that the first book would have 13 classes in it. I never thought I had a big stack of archetypes and options, and a lot of them got in. I didn't even think, I even looked at some that I didn't think were good, but after re-looking at them and working on them a bit, I said, this could work. Let me put that in there. Let me show this to Kevin or something like that. And it's just it's grown a lot bigger than I thought it would, and it makes me really happy. I'll tell you that.
That's good. No, you should be proud, definitely. Kevin, as a publisher, what is it that you wanted to do with Theia when it came out? Have you actually done what you wanted? Do you want to do more with it? Has it been a big challenge? What has the experience been like for you?
So Lands of Theia is not my first campaign setting. Just to kind of start. However, it's my first major campaign setting that I've really done somebody else's work. right? So I wrote a setting called Kingdom of Monsters a few years back, and that was kind of my first setting that I wrote. And then I collaborated with another author on a setting that we put together that is we're still actually revising it now. But anyway, this was really the first time that somebody else came to me and said they have pretty much this whole thing already put together, and what do we do? And so I worked together with Stephen on that, and it was interesting because I had to kind of wrap my head around, okay, so he has different design experience than I do, and so I have to kind of see where he goes with things and what I can do to kind of wrap around with that. But as far as publishing it, it is officially our first setting that we are publishing as part of it's called the Shattered Worlds. Mm-hmm. And what that is the Shattered Worlds kind of began with our Book of Many Things. We have 3 of those that have come out in the last few years. And the idea is it's this multiverse theory, right, that everybody in the last few years has really kind of grasped on, whether it be DC Comics or the MCU or things like that. And I'd be lying if I said that they didn't have some influence, but at the same time, I've played with this idea since my childhood of taking different worlds and really mashing them together and seeing how that works. What is it like to see heroes from video games fighting alongside characters in books and TV and movies? And so this world of Theia is really the first setting that falls within that. So we make allusions to things like other worlds within the setting. When you're reading the campaign book, you'll see that we mention the Shattered Worlds, and we talk about how there's characters from other races, like gnomes in Theia are not an original race. Mm-hmm. They came over from another world entirely. And I mean, they're there because obviously you don't want to get rid of gnomes. People hated that in 4th edition D&D. Yeah. They're like, no, I want to play my gnome. So they're like, yes, they're there. They came over during during one of the events that happened that brought them into this world. And so they have their own little background, and they kind of made a home for themselves.
Stephen, where do you want to take Theia now? I mean, these campaigns, I think, is hopefully going to come out for 5e and Pathfinder 2. You have more adventures already written. Now what?
To be honest, what I'm wanting to do is working on Lands of Theia has given me a lot of experience with writing. Like I said, I was able to look back at my own works and really refine them a lot more. So what I want to do is I want to start working on all of the adventure paths that I have written for Theia. I don't want it to stop here. I want to be able to release the adventure paths one by one. I think I've got a lot of unique adventure ideas. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm going to be honest with you, there are some classes as well that I didn't get out in this book that are in my head. And I was thinking to myself, it would be really cool if this goes on for long enough for me to make another book of similar size and introduce more classes for Theia, and then keep making adventures after that. So I'm still working on it. I'm working on the first adventure path right now, actually.
Excellent. And to finish it up, Kevin, for you, what would you like to see as a publisher happening with Theia?
So I'm looking forward to really getting the first adventure path out with Stephen. One of the things that we haven't really put too much emphasis on is adventure paths through Samurai Sheepdog. So that'll be a good hurdle for us to jump. I myself have written adventure paths, but not for us, for other companies in collaboration, things like that. So I'm familiar with them. I just haven't put any together by myself yet. So that'll be a fun adventure to go across. We got to get there. I want to finish putting out the Kickstarter promises that we've made for 5th edition, 2nd edition, Pathfinder, and then also part of the Kickstarter thing that we put together in our fulfillment was the addition of a chapter of monsters. Okay. And so we've got a whole extra chapter we're adding to the book over and above what's already on Drive Through RPG. So that'll be updated within the month or so. COVID, whatnot. Everything's kind of backed up a little bit more than we would like it to be. But I'm still on track to get things out, and so I look forward to that. And that's going to be a good endeavor because, as I mentioned, we did the Kingdom of Monsters a few years back, and I kind of monstered myself out with that book. There were like 160 monsters in that book that I had to put together, and so I kind of stepped away from that for a few years. It was like, but then Stephen was like, "Well, let's do a monster chapter," and I was like, "Okay." And so we're getting that put together. That'll be a lot of fun to do and kind of get back to now.
Excellent. Right. Okay. We're going to wrap it up, and I have just last 3 questions of the night.
Sure.
Or the afternoon, as in the case may be for you. Okay. Question number 1. I'm going to choose who's going to answer these because otherwise, the second person is going to have an advantage. So, Stephen, I'm going to go for you first. What is the best advice that no one has ever given you?
The best advice that no one has ever given me. That's I mean, I guess it goes without saying to just be true to yourself, but people have told me that. After school specials have told me that. But yeah, just I find that being an adult, I have a lot of friends that say, I wish I did this, I wish I did that, or I wish I'd taken different routes. And I feel like if you're just true to yourself and do what makes you happy, then you always end up happy in the end. And that's the way I took my life.
Okay. That sounds pretty good. Mr. Kevin.
So Stephen stole my answer. Let's see. What would I best advice that I have not necessarily gotten from somebody else? I guess it would be listen to the people you're working with. They have their opinions and they have some really good insights if you're just willing to let that happen. Like I could have at the very beginning just been like, no, this is the way we're going to do this. When I started working with Steven and he was like, so I wanted to add these characters and these classes and stuff. And it would have been, I could have just been like, no, I don't think so. But in collaborating with him, I actually learned quite a bit myself from this experience. And it's been a lot of fun, to really work with him. So yeah, I mean, just listen to those around you, and especially when you're doing design, those other options and stuff really become a lot of fun if you look into it whenever you're working together.
Fair enough. Okay. Question number 2. This one goes first to Kevin. What's the best mistake that you would like to make again?
Oh, goodness. Best mistake I would like to make again. I don't know. I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm not sure how many of them I'd like to make again. Goodness. From a design aspect, I guess it would have to be going in and learning how to lay out content by myself. So I had options of being able to get content from other people and have them lay it out for me and stuff like that. But, I kind of just started doing it by myself and kept doing it by myself. And by doing that, it helped me to, to kind of develop myself in that way that now I feel like I'm a full on able to do layout. I've done layout for other companies and other people now over time. And that has allowed me to expand what I can do. So I guess as far as a mistake is concerned, I guess it would be going in and doing it by myself without asking for help.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. Mr. Stephen, how about you?
I thought long and hard about it. I'm glad I went second. That gave me some time.
Well, I kind of meandered too, so.
I'm gonna say I'll go ahead and take it into the gaming aspect. When I was first becoming a dungeon master, I've always had a problem telling people no. So a lot of my earlier games were ruined because a person wanted to play something that was overpowered or didn't fit or didn't make sense. But I didn't want to tell them no because I figured this is a fantasy game, so you should be able to do whatever you want. But I'm glad I did that because as that kept happening over the years, I learned how to adapt different things to different things and make it make sense. So now it's helped me with my writing as well, like with the designs for Theia. I said to myself, okay, I have this country that does this and this country that does this. How do I make it so that they have a believable and interesting history together? And I think that those kind of experiences helped me to, I guess they were like imagination push-ups.
Okay. I like that.
See, he has such better answers than me.
Okay, last question. Let's see who comes up with the answer first. Imagine that you have a time machine and you go back in time and you meet your 10-year-old self and you say to your 10-year-old self, do not do this. What is this?
I wouldn't. I'd tell him to stay the course. Okay. Everything where I am right now, I'm happy with, and I believe in the idea of the whole butterfly effect. If I was to change something, I wouldn't be sitting here right now having this conversation with you, and I would much rather be here. So,
well, you stole my answer on that one.
I got 1 out of 3.
Much a lot.
It's like I'm very happy with my life right now. If I told myself something and it didn't change the future right now, I would tell my 10-year-old self to maybe learn martial arts from a professional. Because I have a few scars from acting stupid with my friends with sticks in the backyard. So I feel like it'd be better if those scars weren't there. But granted, as long as it didn't change anything.
That's fair enough indeed. Guys, seriously, thank you so much for being with me today. That was really, really good fun. Theia sounds like a truly and genuinely interesting world. That one is probably going to be very well worth delving into as soon as it comes out, which is going to be hopefully when?
So I'm hoping to release the first pass on the 5th edition and the second Pathfinder this month. So by the end of the month, you can expect those should be on drive-thrurpg. But the Pathfinder first edition, if you play that version, that's out now, and it's available for sale. Also, the so that's when you can find that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Hopefully, a lot more to come.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having us.
Pleasure. Yeah. Hopefully we'll have you again sooner rather than later.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure talking to you, man. It was fun.
Pleasure.
All right.
And that's it. Please seriously, consider the possibility that you may have enough material to repeat exactly the same experience that Kevin and Stephen have done, which would be fantastic. And take a look at, Lands of Theia and keep an eye for the 5th edition, version and edition that they're going to come out with. And if you're into Pathfinder 2, hello, this sounds like it could be an absolutely fantastic setting. One in which the geopolitical map is not necessarily defined by interconflict. Yeah, that sounds interesting enough for me. But That's it for today. If you want to appear in our show, by all means, do let me know. Get in touch through our Facebook page or Twitter or however you want. Always happy to listen to you. Leave your comments down there in the video description. Hopefully those banging doors will not be too obvious. I'm sorry, that's my neighbor coming in and out. She really cannot hear very well and everything is loud. So I apologize. But anyway, until the next time, thank you so much for being there, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Take care.